All right, so thank you for joining today. Today, we're not going to have a lot of slides because if you were able to complete the presentations that we had on the meeting planner, they're really good content. So if you didn't have a chance to do them, I recommend you do them, but we're going to have a few slides and then I'm going to jump into some of my developer orgs for me to show you how I understand the content. And just like I share every time, I'm learning with you. This is not a class, this is a study group. So if I say anything that sounds wrong, please go ahead and ask me. Please let me know if I'm incorrect because I'm learning with you and I love to make sure that we share right information. So today's topics are going to be community single sign-on and community self-registration. After we're done going through some of the demos, if we have time, I have a quiz that we'll go through. I think I ended up with about 23 questions. And if we don't finish them, we'll finish them on Sunday morning. And after Sunday morning, I make the quiz public so anybody can take them whenever they want, self-paced. So let's start with community single sign-on. So the first thing I want to cover is if you haven't worked with communities in the past, they're a little bit different when it comes to external users. An external user is actually going to have 3 records in Salesforce. It's going to have a user record with a related profile that's for a community type profile. The role, sometimes they have a role if they're a B2B setup like a partner community. If they're B2C, they may not have a role. So a role is optional. They're always going to have a contact because that is what has their information on it, their email address and so forth. And they're also going to be associated to an account. And this is where it gets a little bit tricky. It can be a person account for the B2C use case, or it can be a non-person account for either B2B use case like partners, or if that org has not enabled person accounts. I know a lot of people don't like person accounts because they add some complexity to the org. I've worked on orgs with person accounts and I would agree that that's true. It adds a lot of complexity. So I would understand not enabling it and using a different model. My current org is mostly B2C and we do not have person accounts enabled. So it's definitely possible to do it. So before we go on, do you have any questions about these 3 objects for the community user? Does that make sense?
I'm good. Yeah, it's user and partner and customer.
For the 3 object, it's going to be user, contact, and account.
Yeah. Okay, got it. Yeah, thanks.
The different types of communities are the ones that you just said. So the different kinds of communities are going to be employees or users, customers, or partners.
Okay, yes, thanks.
So single sign-on, we have 3 options. And the video that talks about this, I think they call them show me videos. I thought they were really well done and I want to keep watching some of those after I pass my certification about other topics for Experience Cloud because they look pretty interesting. But there's really 3 basic flows. The first 2 are exactly the ones that we've covered in the past. You either have the service provider initiated flow, which basically means the community starts the flow, or you have the identity provider community where it's initiated by that application and then they go to the community. Those 2 are exactly like we looked at before and we're still gonna look at them in a second. And then number 3 is social sign-on. And with social sign-on, you can use your Google credentials or Facebook to log into Salesforce communities, which is pretty cool. I know my husband always complains about having to create a new username and password. So if more people added social sign-on, it would make him a much happier person.
So for the social sign-on, it takes the whether you're a Google, you're using Google or Facebook, it takes that contact ID, is it? Or user ID?
It uses the email address to tie things together. So we're gonna, when you look at social sign-on, you're gonna get an email address from either LinkedIn or Google or Yahoo, any of those. And that email address is what Salesforce uses. If there's already a contact with that email address that is associated with a community account, and there's a lot of ifs there, right? And I'll show you what I mean in a little bit. If all of that is true and you find a matching contact, then it updates that record and it doesn't create a new one. If it doesn't find any related contacts to that account, it will create a new one. But it's using email address.
Thank you.
Yep. So let's start with number 1, service provider initiated flow. And so this is a screenshot from the Show Me webinar that we had for the communities on today's planner. and it's great. So I didn't want to change it at all. It just makes sense that when the user is going to go and access the community and they're going to access something that requires them to log in, the community is going to determine, is this person authenticated or not? And so think of this as the SP as a community. If they're not authenticated, just like the standard SP flow, it's going to go say, where do I redirect them?
Are you
Okay,
sharing your screen?
oh, I'm so sorry.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Share my screen. Nope, not that one. Here we go. Okay, can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Okay, good. And so this is the screenshot from that presentation for the Show Me communities where they were going through the main ways that you can do single sign-on. And so number one is, as I was saying, the user is going to access the community and go to a part of the community that is password protected. So the community is going to say, the community is going to say this person needs to be authenticated. Let me go find out what my IDP URL is and redirect them. At that point, the IDP takes over. It's going to authenticate the user. If the user becomes authenticated, if you remember, it's going to create a SAML assertion. It's going to send the SAML assertion back to the service provider. And then the service provider is going to validate the SAML assertion. And if it's validated, it's going to allow the user to log in. And so all of this is exactly what you've looked at before for service provider single sign-on flow. It's just the actual service provider that we're talking about now is not the Salesforce org, but the community. So all of that is standard and follows the same flow. Any questions there?
So first you need to enable the community and then only you need to go into the single sign-on for communities.
Exactly. And so what I'm going to show you when we demo it is I'll show you where you enable your communities. Then we're going to go set up the service provider single sign-on. Then we're going to go set up the IDP provider. And then we're going to connect all of it. I haven't done it by myself real time, so it may not work, but we're going to try. And so at least you'll see some of the things that I learned from this video, which I didn't know before, that are, for me, were key takeaways about how to connect those two things. Because I know I've heard that connecting community to single sign-on can be challenging, and I understand a little better now. So we're going to look at those in detail.
Okay.
The next flow is going to be IDP to community initiated flow. So this one is going to be more where, let's say it's an employee community and you have it set up for your org. You created it as it's not a Salesforce CRM application, but it's some employee app. You're going to put it in your IDP. Maybe it's Microsoft Azure or something else like that, Okta or Pingfederate. Once that user is on the IDP, they're given a list of tiles that they're approved to access. When they click on that link, then that IDP is going to create the SAML assertion, send it to the service provider, and then the service provider is going to say, yes, I know who this person is. I have a trusted IDP sending me the information, and I can let them log in. So this one, just like the standard IDP initiated flow, it goes the same way. The only difference is where you're going is instead of the Salesforce org, is your community or whatever other resource it is. Any questions here?
No.
All right. And so now let's go to the fun one, social sign-on, because this is the one where we're probably learning some new stuff. And so Salesforce out of the box is, there's a little bit of configuration to do to get it working, but Salesforce lets you use a lot of common social platforms to log into an experience site. If that application is not already pre-configured in Salesforce, you're able, and that provider uses OpenID Connect, you can create your own. So a good example is Facebook is set up for Salesforce experience sites, but Yahoo is not. So if you wanted to allow people to log in with their Yahoo email credentials, you can still do it. It just takes a little bit more work. But using LinkedIn and Facebook and Google and Twitter is super easy. It's very straightforward. It takes less than 2 minutes to set it up for them to be able to log in. And so in this scenario, Google or that social entity is really the IDP, right? They're the ones that are controlling whether they have access or not. The user, the very first time they use this method, they're going to get a message saying, are you going to allow Salesforce access to your information? And they go through and they list what it is that you're getting access to. After that initial request, the social sign-on just uses standard single sign-on. It doesn't re-challenge the user each time. It will re-challenge the user if they revoke it for some reason. If somebody stole their account and they lock everything down and then they go back and they use Salesforce, they would have to reauthorize it again. But that's separate. So this is a social sign-on way that it goes. And so basically, the customer goes to the Salesforce login page, and they can see the different ways that they can log in at the bottom. So when they choose one of those options, in this scenario, they're choosing Facebook. From here, they're going to go to Facebook. They leave Salesforce altogether. Facebook logs them in successfully, and then Facebook sends back to Salesforce, yes, this customer is authenticated, and they've given you permission to their information, and now you're able to access the site. So that's the flow. Any questions there?
No, thank you.
All right, so because I am traveling, I didn't do a whole lot of slides. And like I said, the videos that we have from the communities are really good. So now let's go look at some of the demo parts. So let's see. So I have lots of dev orgs. I keep creating them as I need them. And so it can get a little dangerous. So the first thing is, let's go to, when you first go into digital experiences, there's a settings page. And when you go into settings, you enable it. And once you enable it, these additional options will show up on your page. Before you enable it, all you'll see is digital experiences and settings. When you enable it, it's going to use your domain name as the root for your site, and whatever the name of your new site is will come after the slash. And then here you can just do the different, this is all automatically done for you when you enable it. But here you can say, the different settings for your customers, your roles, your partners, and so on. I haven't played a whole lot with communities, and since our focus today is identity access management, it's not something we're going to go into, but just be aware that when you enable it, you have lots of options here to play with. Once you've created it, you would go into all sites. And for me, when I created this, for some reason, it took about 10 or 15 minutes for the all sites to become available. It just wouldn't show me the digital experiences for me to add a new one. It would only show me the old sites, not the experience sites. And so I just had to wait for it to catch up for me to be able to move forward. So if that happens to you, don't worry, it's not you. It's something in the back end that is just not spooling up what it needs to yet. Right now, I've created 2 communities because I'm playing with customers and partners, and you can see it's my domain name with slash and customers on it. If you want to work on the front end of what the customer is going to be looking at, you go to Builder. If you want to look at some other options for the site, you go to Workspaces, and that's where we're going to start. And so here, almost always you're going to be either in administration or in Builder when you're doing different things. So we're going to go into administration for now. And so this is where I have what my domain name is, whether I want to activate or deactivate it, and my login and registration. Before I go to login and registration, because I want to show you single sign-on first, let's go to single sign-on. And so just like you said earlier, the first thing you do is you stand up your community. Done. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to create a single sign-on SAML with an IDP. And so I have one already created. Let me see if it remembers me. They're a little bit different, so I'm going to go look it up. So here, if you have a Salesforce org set up as an IDP, which is, this is yet another Salesforce org that I have, when you go to identity provider and you enable it, it automatically gives you an endpoint that you can use to set up for other applications. So I'm going to take a shortcut and I'm going to use this because it's a little bit easier and faster. And so here, if you remember, this domain has to be in your remote site settings. If it's not, you'd get an error. Mine already is, so it will let me create it. And I'm going to name it something that hopefully in the future will make sense to me. And so what's nice about using the XML is it automatically populated for me my issuer ID. I don't need to worry about the certificate because it's already been done as part of the XML endpoint. And then here it's populating my domain for the org that I'm on right now. You want to use your federated ID between two Salesforce orgs or IDP and SP, because otherwise usernames are not have to be unique and they would never find each other. So this is about it. I'm going to hit save. And one of the things to note is at the bottom now we have for communities. And so here on communities, we have a login URL, and I have two. I have one. If I had more experience sites, I would have more for each one. And so right now we're going to work on the customers one. And so now that I have this, I'm not completely done yet because I have not set up this service provider on my IDP yet. Do you remember what you need to do on your IDP to complete the process? And it's okay if you don't. Let me go in here. We're going to go to App Manager. And when you go to App Manager, go back a page. Yep, you got to set up a connected app. And so I'm in my App Manager and I'll go create a new connected app because every service provider needs its own connected app to tie back to the service provider. And then we're going to enable SAML on this connected app. And here's my entity ID. And so here is go to it in a second. And this is where I haven't tested this. And if either of you know this, I would welcome some feedback, but I'm not sure. I think this is correct. My entity ID is my domain name. My ACS URL will be this, but it's missing.
But in community, they said we need to put the org ID. So that's not required.
Well, the org ID is what I'm putting here.
Okay.
And so because you're correct. And so that's what I don't remember if it goes under entity ID or ACS ID. And I do know it goes in one of them. Where is, I don't think I have it open. I don't, so let's go to community company. So my org ID is over here. And I'm going by memory because I think this is what I remember it was. It was login !SO Salesforce org equals, and then your org without any spaces. Otherwise it would break. I was surprised this is required. A lot of times Salesforce tells you that you need to protect your org ID so that it's not visible to other people, right? Because people can do a denial of service attacks or anything like that. But it looks like Experience Site still requires it because when you have it here, I think between when it bounces back and forth, this URL could be visible when it's redirecting and you're exposing your company org ID, but it's here. I'm not sure, like I said, I know it goes into one of these, but I'm not sure which one. And so now the issuer is my IDP. I need to match my process and then we're going to save it. And so now, as you can see for single sign-on, it's just like any other service provider, right? You go to your Salesforce org, you enable SAML, with the details, you go to your IDP, you give them the information back, and now you would be able to connect them. I don't have a user set up for us to play with this right now, but these are the pieces that you need to do. Create your community, set up SAML on your service provider, set up the IDP information back, and then connect it. So that's single sign-on. What questions do you have?
So for the SAML, the community on in the tab of community, it directly creates whatever communities you have, whether it's here you have specified as partner and customer, but how many ever sites you have, it will generate for everything. Am I correct?
Yes, that's correct. So when you create this SAML here on the service provider site, if I add another community here, it would add a third one. And what it's giving you is just the URLs, but it's not giving you the full URL because this does not give you your org ID as you called out. You have to go stitch that together on your own. And yes, you would need individual connected apps on the identity provider if you were going to connect one for partners and one for communities because it's different endpoints.
Okay, so now you connected to you created the IDP. In that you gave one org ID, right? So to which, whether it's partner or customer, it will be, they both will be able to get connected.
No, I only gave you the customer URL, so it's only going to work for customer.
Okay.
Yeah, because the partner would get directed to the wrong site, and then it would not connect with the two things. So I can definitely work with this and test it. But I think what would happen is the partner site would come back and say that the SAML assertion does not match because the URLs are not correct. So it should come back and say, no, this SAML assertion I'm getting from IDP is not correct, bounce it back if you cross customers and partners like that.
Okay.
Yeah, because remember the last part of the single sign-on dance is the service provider has to validate that SAML assertion and say, do I trust this IDP provider? And did they give me the right entity ID that matches what I expected? Did they give me the right algorithm for hashing my key? If any of those things don't match, and I've had it where if you just put a slash at the end, that doesn't match, so it fails. And so it's very exact on both sides.
Okay. For a minute, can you go to the IDP part? IDP,
Sure.
the org which you have, the IDP.
Yep, here's the IDP. And
Okay.
so here, here's the customer URL.
Okay. Okay. That's where you've put in. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. And so then if we go back to our community, let's go to login and registration. And I've been playing here because what I don't see here is I don't see where I connect that. Login page, default page. Like if you go to my domain, you can select the SAML one that you created, right? And I don't see that here. So I think this is something I need to research because I don't see where I tie it all together. It may just happen in the background. And once I test it, I'll figure out if just what I did now makes it work. And let's see. No, because there's nothing here. There's nothing here pointing me back to the IDP. There's got to be something I do to add the IDP here, and I don't know what it is, so I'll have to figure it out.
Okay.
And so here you can see I have customer community ally. This is one of my social sign-ons, and I'll show you that next. So unless you know how to enable it here, I think that one will be something I'll research before Sunday. And if you're able to join on Sunday, we can talk about it then. If not, we can figure out how do we communicate beyond that. But
I think you
right
need
now,
to
I don't know
go
how to
to
enable it.
setting. You need to enable the community, right? That's what your
The community is enabled and the community is published. I don't know how to add my single sign-on on. So when I go to my domain name here, right, and I go to authentication configuration and I go to
edit.
edit, and it's including my social sign-ons. Because this one is my Salesforce's IDP for the community. It's not showing up anywhere. And I have the URL here. No, I'll have to research this. I don't know how to complete the connections because it's not showing up here either.
Okay.
Because I would expect somewhere authentication services the same way I can check my social sign-on options here, that I would have something like that
Actually,
on
you
the
need to
community
add.
itself.
I remember doing it once for Google.
Yeah, yeah.
I think you need to add whichever you're looking for Facebook. Am I correct? Or
No, right now I'm looking for, so I'm looking to this Salesforce's
okay,
IDP,
okay,
Tom.
okay,
I'm trying to enable this on my community and I don't know where to do that.
okay.
Yeah, yeah. Because the next thing we're going to look at is the
The
Facebook one that
social.
you're talking about.
Okay,
Yeah, the social. Because I've been playing with social and social makes sense to me, but this one I haven't tested it, so I haven't tied it all together yet. I'll figure out what happens there and then create some questions on it.
okay.
So now let's look at social sign-on. So because that is the next topic we have for today. And so the way the social sign-on starts is you do auth providers. And I already have 3 set up. And the reason I have different ones is, actually, let me create one and I'll show you why. So these are automatically provisioned for us, and I'm going to use Facebook as an example. And I'm naming it for the customer community that I have, because one of the things that you do here is you're going to leave everything blank, because this is the pre-configured version that we're going to use from Salesforce. And so here, I'm leaving everything blank, except that I want to automatically create a registration handler for this social sign-on. And so when I do that, Salesforce will create it for me. And then here I want to execute registration as this user has to be able to create users on the system. Right now, what I've done is I've created a dedicated user. This would be a best practice, right? Have one user creating that has permissions to create users, and they're the ones that own that community. So customer manager is that user for me. And that's it. You save it. And so now this is available for use. So when I go back to when I go back to my community and I refresh my page, now here is my Facebook option, right? And that's what I expected to see with the SAML. I just don't know where that one went on, because that even says single sign. But anyway, so here I would add Facebook, and when I save this, back up here, and I go back to my homepage, now I have Facebook. Now the reason I'm naming these community versus partner is because if you don't do that, this handler
Live.
is the very first, it's the draft version of your handler. You need to go update this for your purposes and your needs. You should not just use this the way that it gets created, because they're doing things for you that may not be what you need, like how they create a username, how they find existing users. Like right now, this is tying it to the profile customer portal user, and that's not the profile I want to use. I created a custom profile. It's best practice to create custom profiles for your community and not use the standard ones. So that would be a bad idea. If you have any of your own rules about what the username should be like this one is adding, making it unique by adding acmecorp.com, right? Because that way it's specific to this particular org. Because remember, usernames are unique across all Salesforce systems. So For instance, Home Depot uses Salesforce for their e-commerce store. I don't know if their e-commerce store is Experience Cloud or not, but let's just say that it is. And I have an account there. Whatever they're doing there to make my username unique there, because it's my email address, and I have other commerce relationships with Salesforce stores that they're doing something to make me unique. That way it doesn't come back and error out. But either way, this has to be maybe for your partner community, you have a different profile than you do for your community profile, which makes sense because they're different communities. That's why I'm naming them, one for community and one for partner. So you want to make sure that your social sign-ons, while they can be shared across communities, you probably have some very interesting rules that you want to either have one master registration handler that can handle your registration from multiple experience sites in one class, or have unique classes and unique auth providers to tie that all together. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So you have one handler for all the sites, or?
Right now, I have one for each social sign-on type. I have not combined it. If I was going to go in my own environment with this, I would ask my developers to make that one handler and not have them be unique. We would probably end up doing a handler, a helper class that would go do the different things for us, because that way it's not just the default code that Salesforce gives you, because I don't even know what the Tesla coverage on this is.
Okay.
It's not following our naming conventions. It's not doing anything else that I would expect it to do. So, but
Okay.
yeah, but keep in mind that because it's for different communities, you just want to make sure you address these automatically generated classes, because even the name, this doesn't tell you which one it's for. So you'd want to rename it or make sure you know what it's doing.
But
So
the
I
best
don't
practice is to have different sites to have one is to have different handlers. Am I correct,
um
or?
no, that's probably going to be very specific to your business case, right? To what your org needs. That one is not a best practice that I've read. You definitely want to make sure you address your different experience sites in your either single handler or one-off handlers. But
Mhm.
other than that, I didn't read any best practices.
Okay.
Um, I believe it or not, I don't have Facebook. So I cannot test Facebook, but, and I broke my LinkedIn because I was playing with it. So I broke it. So let's do Google. Google. So I definitely have Google. And I'll leave this one pretty basic. Oops. And let's go back. Oop. I need to enable it here before I try to use it. Here's Google. I'm going to take off all the ones that don't work. And it's just right off the bat. The only way you can sign into this experience site, because I took off the username and password, now that I think about it, is saying you can log in, but you're going to log in with one of these accounts. And let me see. That's funny, because I don't want to do that from this particular profile. And I broke it. So it's not finding my email address. And because I was playing with the code, it's just not happy with me. But here I would have expected it to let me go on to the page. But you can see from my community site, it immediately went to Google to go log me in. Google said I'm fine. it's my experience site that's having a problem logging me in. But this is where the troubleshooting comes into setting it up takes about 2 minutes. Troubleshooting can take 2 weeks. So let me see. The other thing that I wanted to show you is that I learned this week. This one. So when you are looking at your site, you choose on here that you want to do the login page for the experience builder page, because the experience sites comes with a whole bunch of pages out of the box. You can do it that way, and I'm going to put back the username, save it. And from here, I can go to my builder, right? So I started with my workspace. I went to administration. Now I can go to builder. Actually, before I leave here, the other thing I wanted to show you is members. So the way that you grant access to community, right, is through profiles and permission sets. By default, it shows you the internal profiles. So you're going to be looking, because I know I do this, you're going to be looking for your community profile and not finding it. Make sure you change to external or customer. And then it's going to show you the other profiles that you have. I did one custom called external identity user custom, which is why that one's here. And you can do that either with profiles or permission sets. But I remember there was a question about how you grant access to communities. And the only way to do it is to assign a profile or permission set. That was a question on the exam when I took it. So questions on this? Sounds good. So now let's go to
So there
builder.
is a guide guest user profile, right? Also in community.
The guest user profile
Guest,
is
yeah.
different. So that guest user is for people that is for a non-authenticated user. So if they're not authenticated, it's the guest user profile, and that is the profile that you're talking about. So when you create the community, it creates that guest profile for each community, and you can go through it and give it the right permissions that you want. But that one is for users that are not authenticated.
Okay, so that cannot be used for authentication
No, you
directly.
have to
Okay.
use, yep. And this is the best practice. Clone a standard profile, make it custom, and make sure it has the right permissions for your environment, and use that for authentication.
Okay.
So now you've given them access. We've done the login, but now we want to look at how they register for self-registration. So there's a page that's already built for us. And out of the box, it has the first name, last name, and email, and that's it. If you want to add, oh, that's funny. It wouldn't let me add the logos earlier. Now they're there. Anyway, if you want to add more fields to this page, first name, last name, and email, like address or city, state, zip, those kind of things, you have to create, let me click on this. Oops. On the self-registration widget, here you can add a whole bunch of things. Leave account ID blank. This is what account it would be associated with. You can do that somewhere else. Down here, it says extra field set name. And so this is if you want to add more fields that are shown on this page. These fields can only be from the user object. So remember the beginning, I said you have a user, a contact, and an account. That is true, but when you're looking at the fields that you're adding on that page, they can only be from the user object. So I've already created a field set. And if you haven't done this before, you go to your object, you get a field set, you create a new one if you need to. I already have one, so I have one here. And you find your fields that you want and you put them down here. You want to make sure whatever fields you put on here are things that the user can actually provide. If I put alias, it would probably cause problems because that's a system ID. But I'm adding phone, email, state, zip, country because I want a full address. And so what they want is they want the API name for the field set. And down here, once I provided the name, it adds the fields to your real time. So if I go to this page and look at it, now when you register, you're required to provide all of these elements. I thought it was interesting that it's only through field set. You can't modify this page with for this particular page, you can't do visual force, you can't do a screen flow. The way to do this is just to do the field set. So let me go back to self-registration, login and registration. A couple more things to cover here, and then we'll go to the quiz. Keep in mind, where is it? Here is where you select allow customers and partners to self-register. And once you do this, you can choose the kind of page that you're going to be using and then what page to use. And then the other thing is you can only associate one profile with self-registered users, which I thought was odd. And so all of your users that get created, two things are going to have that one single profile. And if you leave the account blank here like it is, it's going to create a person account if it's enabled. I haven't tested what happens if I leave it blank and I don't have person accounts enabled and I register. I'm pretty sure I'm going to get an error. Maybe that's why it's erroring on me now, now that I think about it, actually. Because remember that error I was getting on the other page, and I said I broke it. I wonder if this is why, because I don't have person accounts enabled in my org and I had it blank. When you put in an actual account here, hit save. I must enter name. It's finicky that way. It doesn't always want to recognize what you typed in, even though it matches. There we go. Successfully saved. So now when I go to customers and I go to my main page, so what this means to me is that this one account will have all of the contacts that are related that are self-registered. And so here, when I had it working, I had registered 2 different users. And so I had Bob and Marlene that are part of these customers. And I would expect that this would be a problem because Salesforce says you can only have 10,000 contacts associated to one account. So if you have a very a B2C type of scenario, this could very easily be overrun. And I think this is where we go back to your registration handler. It needs to be customized for your use case. If you're going to have a large volume of users doing self-registration, you probably want to do something else than just do the default, because the default is going to get you in trouble very quickly. But out of the box, you can tie them to an existing account. They can register, and that way they all get collected here. And this is what I meant when I said this email address when it's looking for me. If there's a contact on this account with this email address, and I try to register again with the same email address, it's not going to create me new. It's just going to update this record. If this email address is on a completely different account with that email address, it's not going to find it. It's only looking for contact under this specific account that you specified. All right. I think I covered all the big stuff. We'll have a little time for like one quiz. I mean, a couple questions. Let me see. Are you guys up for a quiz?
This profile it's taking is the profile it's taking is here is
That profile is the one that you set when you do self-registration.
okay.
And so today I'm not going to play with you, but if you guys want to join, this quiz has 20 odd questions. On Sunday, we'll complete it because we don't have enough time to get it done today. And then on Sunday, I'll publish it for anybody to take whenever they want. And so if you guys are willing to go on that page and give me any feedback, I appreciate that. If not, in a minute, I'm just going to change it over to the quiz itself. One of the things that I did is I've added.
It's asking for access code.
You went to this link and it's asking for the access code?
Yeah.
Mhm. You guys get to see the back end of this tool. Oh, I see one answer. No, it's set up like usual. So if you went to the link, it should be working. And so once you, oops. And so there we go. Now you should be able to join the quiz. And this is up to you guys. If you want to do the quiz, we can do it. If not, we can just talk about different things and just whatever topics you want to cover.
I have a quick question. Where do we access the recordings of your past study sessions?
You can access them on the YouTube channel for the Salesforce Architects. And so if you go to, let me put it on the link because that way it'll be easier. There's a playlist for these particular topics for the study group, and that way you can see it there. I usually post them on the prior meetings as well, and that way you can see them there. So now we have a few minutes for a quiz. You guys joined. Like I said, I won't be able to join you guys because I only have one screen today, but oh, I have 19 questions. I couldn't remember how many I came up with.
Is that
and some of the, go ahead.
oh sorry, is that the same place as the show me videos or?
No, it's different.
Okay. Okay.
Yep. And so for some of these, I don't have sources. I'll add the sources later, but the first question is external community users cannot be associated with a person account. True or false? Correct. And I think I understand your question now. Oops. And so before I show you the next question, if you go to our architect meeting, if you go to past meetings, for instance, the one last Tuesday for delegated authentication,
Okay.
I'm posting the recordings here.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry to be lazy. I just wasn't logged in and I thought, oh, I wonder.
Oh, is that why? No worries. But if you go to the YouTube channel, it's also all in one playlist. So you can do either or, but I am posting the videos on the meeting after we're done.
Oh, great.
I realized I hadn't understood your questions. I'm like, wait, I think that's what you're asking for. All right, let's do a couple more questions together. Yep.
The quiz is also there, right?
Yeah, I end up, let me see if I added, because I think I have been adding them. I think for session 5 on Sunday, I haven't yet. And so, but I will add the quiz.
Okay.
After I have 2 questions to fix from Sunday because we went through them, like, oh wait, those answers are wrong. And so I'll fix them and then I'll put the quiz here, and this quiz becomes self-paced. So you can do it on your own, go through them and see how you did.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah. Yep. I'm taking the certification in 2 weeks, so I'm going to go back to all of our past quizzes and then retake them again just to see what I remember. I think right now I have 145 questions altogether with these topics, and we'll come up with more. All right, next question. On the community registration page, how do you add additional fields to the page for users to complete? Select one answer. And so you have to create a field set with user fields and add it to the configuration widget. And this is where if you can't add contact fields and you cannot add account fields. Yep.
Yeah. But screen flow, I also saw for self-registration, you can also use a flow.
I haven't played with that. I know you can do a login flow after you've done self-registration. And because I know you can do visual force. I haven't seen the registration flow. If you have a link, I would love to see it.
Okay.
Yeah, because I can see that being a question on the certification exam, and right now I would miss that because in my head it's visual force page, experience, site, and then the configuration page. But I didn't see screen flow as an option. But yeah, and this is a good example of I fix questions after we talk because sometimes I don't know all the answers.
But you shared a link for the trailhead, right? There for self-registration. That's through
Yeah, but
login
that one
flow.
wasn't using a screen flow. It was using the
Login
out of the
flow.
box. Correct. The login flow,
Mm.
but the login flow comes after the user has registered, not during the process.
Okay.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, because they had the example of if you want to collect terms and conditions or additional information from
Contact
your users,
ID. Yeah. Contact
yep,
ID.
you can do that as a screen
Yeah.
flow. Yep. We have time for two more questions. So question 3, where are social sign-on options enabled for communities? Select one answer.
This is
And so it's under site administration, under login and registration. And so the social sign-on options, first you create the auth providers, and after you've created them, you enable them on the actual experience site you want to use it. So one experience site might have Facebook, and because it's for customers, and your other experience site might have LinkedIn because it's for partners. But you do it on the specific site that you're looking to add that option to.
so what you provide on the auth provider? The auth
On the
provider also you provide the like whether it's going to be Facebook or LinkedIn, right?
No, I was naming it that way just because I like to have very descriptive names when I'm creating things in my org, but that's completely up to you. The auth provider is very generic. It doesn't care what you call it. It's something for you to be able to identify it.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, and you can create Google one time and then reuse it as many times as you want. Just for me, because of the registration handler, that's the reason I was creating separate ones.
Okay.
All right, let's do one more question and I'll show you the leaderboard. On the self-registration page, under assign users to profile and account, how do you associate a user to a person account? Select one answer. And so you leave the account field blank. When you leave the account field blank, it's going to associate it to a person account. If you put in an account name in there, it will associate all those contacts under that one account. And so let's go see. No. This is how we learn, right? And so here's how you guess it. And so on Sunday, we'll go through the questions again. I'll try to add sources before Sunday because that way you guys know where the information is coming from. And I will post today's video on today's meeting page. And I hope you guys had fun today.
Yeah, thank you. I thought for person account, you need to, if you don't add in that account name, okay, it takes the
Down here.
person account if it is enabled, right?
It has to be enabled. That's correct. And it says if you've enabled person accounts, leave account field blank.
Okay, got it. Yeah.
So yep, you would leave that blank. And I think this is why I've been getting errors because I erased it and I shouldn't have. But yeah, this is where it gets more interesting. But yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
Well, thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful week. And if I see you on Sunday, that's